Yeah. I think now we're still finding restaurants, not necessarily for
What's your favorite?
we just went to.
Good evening, everybody. Can you guys hear me way there in the back? Can you hear me in the back? All right, excellent, thank you. Thank you for coming. We have an in-person audience, and we also are live streaming for our families at home as well. So the counselors and I will be talking back and forth. My name is Rachel Cheddarello. I'm the supervisor of school counseling. Thank you for coming. Before I introduce the counselors, just a show of hands of parents who are going through the junior meetings, the college application process for the first time. Okay. And a big gap between some of 7 years ago, maybe, is that what you said? And how many years ago? 17 years ago. So some things have changed. Maybe you haven't used Naviance before, but you're going to hear more information about that. So thank you for being here. All right, so we have our counseling team here. We have Mrs. Gormley. Just show your hand. We have Ms. Goudreau and Mrs. Biggins. And we're going to be breaking up this presentation, kind of talking about, walking you through it step by step, and the counselors will be doing their part as well. For the people at home, we don't have the option to field any questions that you might have. However, we do encourage you to email your child's counselor if you have any questions that you would like answered. They'll be very prompt to respond to you. And then maybe some of the folks here will ask some questions that you would like answered, and that will get answered. So I will turn it over to Ms. Gormley. Okay. Ms. Gormley, it's all yours.
All right.
Hi, everybody. We were talking before how many years in between and have we done this before. This is my 17th year at Gilon High School. And each year we do like to welcome junior parents to come in and learn a bit more about the process to hopefully alleviate some of the stress, some of the concerns you might have, any questions you might have. So this program is thorough. It's a lot of information. It will also be posted on the website, and we offer junior meetings for juniors and their parents, so you could actually come in and meet individually with your son or daughter's counselor, and we'll refresh, go through a bit of this, answer more specific questions. I know we like to do a tutorial on Naviance, which we're going to explain. So that's always available to you. So this will be an overview, a lot of information, but like I said, we're here to assist you through this process. And nothing happens quickly. This is almost December of junior year. And really, by the time anyone applying to a four-year school, they have to technically deposit at a college by May 1st of their senior year. So it's a long process. Nothing's fast. So let me just go over some of the 11th grade tasks that a junior student should be looking at this year. When we say research colleges and develop a preliminary list, so starting to put together a list of programs, colleges, ideas for their future, what are they thinking about? There's so much information online, so obviously students should be checking into whether it's a program, a college, an occupational program, whatever it might be, starting to do some research. That's important. And as we say, develop a preliminary list, just starting to put that list together. Again, nothing's happening. I tell students, you're not deciding where to go right now. You're simply deciding, is this a school or a program that I think fits me? Is this a place I want to check out? And like I said, not till senior year will that student actually make that decision. So visiting colleges in person or virtually, whichever is most convenient for you, your family. Some students like to consider, they might not really know what they want. A lot of kids are young, they don't know what they want or don't want. And we can say, do you want a big school or small school? Oftentimes, and I know when I'm meeting with students, they're not even sure, because if they haven't really been exposed or been on a campus, they may not really know what that the difference looks like. So if a student is really in that position, which many are, maybe you visit a large school, maybe visit a small school. Let's see what the difference looks like, at least at this point. Again, they're not deciding where to go. They're simply deciding what's a possibility. When we say take standardized tests, if possible. So the way of the world changed dramatically in many ways during COVID. Most especially in the college process, it changed in relation to standardized test scores. So for years, it was a must-have, a must-do. Had to take an SAT, had to have an ACT, something, a standardized test used for college admissions. COVID came, testing centers shut down, there was no availability of it, so schools that had not already been test optional moved towards a test optional model, which meant they were evaluating a student based on everything but a test score. The test score was taken out of the equation. And in doing so, many schools are continuing with that. I think the uncertainty with maybe sophomores and juniors is whether or not a school will go back to that. Will they start requiring it? And that's where students have to do a little bit of homework, checking on a college website to look and see for the class of 2024, do they require a test? Many are still not going towards it, but you'd have to do a bit of homework just to confirm that. So a lot of students will take a test just to have it, just in case. There are schools in Florida, many of the public universities in Florida still require an SAT or an ACT. They are still requiring a test. So if a Florida school is on the list, it would be in a student's best interest to have a test score. But again, take it if possible. And then later on, as we go through the whole process for applying, students can then determine later on whether or not to submit a score. That's where we are in the process with that. Many schools are test optional, which means if you have a score and it helps you because it fits into a strong range, then they should submit it. If it does not help them, they should not submit it if a school is test optional. And I believe we'll get more into that. I attend a college fair. There are college fairs. There's one at CCM each year. There are different college fairs. You can Google it. You can look it up. It's usually on our site. So if you attend a college fair, that's where a rep from each school will be stationed at a table. They have materials. You can go up, ask questions, talk, have your son or daughter interact with the admissions counselor. That's a nice plus, just to try to get some information from the admissions person who's manning the table. Students need to speak with teachers about letters of recommendation, and somebody will be going over that in a minute, soon. Draft essays, oftentimes during the summer, between now and senior years, when kids should start formulating an essay. There are feedback forms in here. There are links. So when you go on, when this is posted, there are forms that the counselors ask for. We want it by June 1st from the junior, who will be a rising senior. It helps us write the letters of recommendation. So we're basically saying a student generally needs 2 letters of recommendations from a teacher, 2 teachers, but they also need a counselor letter of rec. We know we have to write the letter. We do that for each of our seniors, rising seniors. But we do ask for some input from the student and the parent, and that form, we can hand it out tonight. It'll be lost in the mix. So, you can access it here. We'll remind students, but it helps us write our letter of recommendation. So we can be thorough. We have 1 page to say, this is why you should take this student. So we want to make the most of our opportunity to support the student's application. And then in here is another helpful piece, a junior checklist. If you go through that, it breaks down a bit more of the steps, things that a junior should be doing over the next few months, over this year. So we're covering a broader range of topics tonight. You should definitely go in, check it out. You may have already started doing some things, but that will be helpful. It's a helpful resource. Okay, so in the junior process, especially related to four-year college admissions. There are decisions being made, and the level, the number of applications going into colleges lately is crazy. They're getting so many applications because kids are nervous. They don't know that they can get in. So what they used to maybe do 7 to 10 applications, I have somebody who submitted 20 this year. I have another student who submitted 15. So their nervous energy and their worry about whether or not they will have options has translated into a lot more applications, which then the colleges have to manage the number of applications versus the number of seats they actually have. And therein is the issue. So how are decisions made by the colleges? They'll all say they do a holistic review. They look at all of the factors they are asking for. So the first document that goes in is going to be the transcript. And that is the representation of what a student has done here at Kinnelon High School, 9th grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade. It will show the courses the student took, the level of the course, the grade in the course. It shows the progression from 9th grade until 11th grade. Is this a student who got stronger each year? Is this a student who started out strong and then maybe declined a bit? They're going to look and see, who is the student in the classroom? What courses did the student take? How did the student do in the classes? They're going to look at all grades. Standardized test scores if they are required, like I said, or if it is test optional and they are submitted. The student will have the option for any test optional school to determine whether or not the scores are part of his or her portfolio in the application, essentially. Letters of recommendation, and like I said, there's a counselor letter of rec, 2 teacher letters of rec, there's an essay in most applications. However, your son or daughter may come across an application that does not have an essay. There's nothing wrong, it's just that's not part of that school's process. Activities, special talents, level of commitment. So, in the application, the schools are asking for a list of activities. What have you done? What has this student done in school? And I think sometimes kids feel like they have to have 10 million activities. I have to do everything. But you really don't. Because, we have to remember they're 17, 18-year-old high school students, 16 right now. So what has a student done? Where has a student spent their time outside of the classroom? In what activities? Part of that shows the interest that a student might have, or as one admissions person said in a counselor event I was at, it shows them to some degree. Here's a student who's very actively involved on their high school campus. And yet when I look at their grades are strong. So the correlation that this is a student who will potentially be an active member of the college campus while still earning solid grades. So it gives them a bit of that type of a picture. So students should be pursuing activities that they're interested in. And when it says level of commitment, there are some kids who join a club in 9th grade, they love it. It becomes something they truly enjoy. So maybe by the time the student is a junior or a senior, maybe they have an officer position in that club. Not everybody's going to be president of a club, but really just how does a student spend their time outside of the classroom? And demonstration of interest. That one's a little tricky these days because, removing barriers for students. Not everybody can get to a college campus. They just can't always get there. So colleges are using that demonstrated interest bearing. A lot of schools will tell you it's out the window. They don't even look at it at all. Others will say, well, if you're an hour away, we know you could get here and you didn't choose to come visit our campus. Is it really a campus that you're thinking about? But, and so that will vary depending on the college. But basically, like I said, it's a holistic review of the student and the application and what is provided for them to see. So as students are doing the research, and we're going to show you a little bit about Naviance. That's a tool that we use for researching and looking at admissions criteria, looking to see There's a scattergram, which I'll show you shortly, and it shows the student where he or she stands in relation to kids from Kinnelon since 2008 who've applied to the different colleges, and based on their statistics, whether they were accepted or not. So it gives the student a sense of, I'm looking at this school, and I fit comfortably into the number of yeses for Kinnelon High School. So I think I would have a good chance of getting in. So then we have different categories. We have likely, target, reach. You may have heard students call it their safety. A lot of college counselors like to get away from the word safety these days. It's tough to call a school safety these days. So likely, target, reach. So likely, I should expect that this student should be able to get in. Target, you're right in the numbers. So anyway, you're right in the numbers. It should be a solid choice. And then a reach is reach. And a reach could be a reach for a lot of different reasons. As I said before, with the volume of applications that are coming into the colleges, you have some schools that have accepted 3% of their applicants, 4%. They know that, let's say they took 100 kids. If they took the next batch of 100, those kids would be fine and would be successful. If they took the next batch of 100, they would likely be fine. There's just so many seats, and compared to the volume of applications they're getting, 3 and 4 or 5% for some of these, most competitive schools is a reality of what's going on. So you would never want a student to apply to only that type of a school, only that picture, because it will be a very stressful process. So I think more kids need to be looking at, they tend to look at their likelies a lot and think, well, I should get in, I should get in, I should get in. But I think they should be really looking at the targets, because if those reaches, who knows what the numbers look like, they at least want some targets that they would choose to go to. They would feel solid about attending. They wouldn't feel like, I don't want to go there, because that happens a lot when kids get into their likely school and they're like, well, I don't really want to go there, I have no interest. Like, well then maybe not put it on your list. Maybe take it off your list. Or focus a bit more on those targets. So you just want to be strategic in what you're looking at, and you have to decide how many applications are going to go out. That is absolutely a family decision, but you also want to use the information that's available to you to make those decisions. And like here we say the average for applications was about 8 to 10 schools. I don't know, that's changed a lot, and you may find you're sending out a lot more. All right, so like I said, Naviance, that's a research tool we use. There's career information in there. There's a search, so you could go in and do a search to say, I want to find a school that is in Mid-Atlantic states. There are 10,000, no more than 10,000 students. I want a biology major. I think I want, some kids will say they don't want to play football, but they want to be able to go to a D1 football game. That's a part, although it's not the academic part, it's not the major part, it's not the program part, it's a part of the overall experience that some kids want. So you put in the criteria you're looking for, and then it will pull up a list of schools that meet that criteria. And then you can dig deeper and see the admissions criteria, what the picture looked like. So Naviance is a tool for you to use, and like I said, if you make a meeting, an appointment with your counselor, your son or daughter's counselor, oftentimes we'll do a tutorial, we'll do a search with you, so we can say, all right, tell us what you want. Let's look and see, and we at least can get you started on a tentative list that you can add to, take away from. It's, the list is moving until the student actually starts applying in their senior year. So here's a snapshot of what you might see, what you will see on a Naviance screen. So this is Elon University. So you can see on the tab where it says overview is the red bar underneath it. So there's an overview, that's what that is, graduation rate, acceptance rate, college overlaps. I personally like the college overlaps feature because let's say a student looked at Elon and loved it. The overlaps feature will tell a student, kids who applied to Elon also applied to these other schools. So sometimes when they're looking for just one more school that's maybe similar or in that kind of family, that might give them a few other ideas of schools to look into. Deadlines, and so all the deadlines are there. Then you can go to the next, click on the next one. It says studies. Those are all the majors the school has. Student life will tell you a lot of information of dorming, housing, clubs, activities. The admissions, that's where you're going to see statistics for acceptance and getting into the school. And then costs. So this is a screenshot of just some of what Naviance has. So when I say there's a scattergram, this is what you're going to see. You have, this is Boston College, and this, I'm not sure, this was a couple, 2021. So the green boxes are students from Kinnelon who were accepted to BC since 2008. The red checks are students who were not accepted. Obviously, you don't see the name, that's private information, but it has a sense of what was the average accepted GPA, what was the average accepted test score. And like I said, with the whole test score piece, if you're looking at this, now if you see that red circle up there over to the right, I believe it now is not a red circle, I think it's a little blue person, but that will be the student will be placed on the scattergram based on their statistics. Removing the test scores has altered this a bit, but basically, when I sit with students, when the counselors sit with students, here's a student who looked at BC. They're far to the right, so that would be more like a target school. They're comfortably in their numbers, but BC is very competitive, and you never know in that year if it goes the right way for that student. You just don't, you can't be certain with a school like BC because it's just so competitive and it's popular. But this student would likely apply there. They would feel it's probably a target, but with the uncertainty of knowing the volume of applications that BC tends to get. So with students who are looking at BC, and the further over to the left they are, that's a little bit more of a reach type of a school because the numbers are a bit higher. But it just gives a student and a parent a sense of what does the picture look like for this school as far as GPA. If you this can help you determine to submit a test score or not. If you are significantly lower on the test score area, then don't send it. It's not part of the application. And it's one of the hardest things I think for students and parents to embrace that whole test optional thing, because for years and years and years, all you've heard is that the test score has to be submitted. And now we're saying, no, it doesn't. And no, it doesn't harm their students' chances. They are not going to count it against the student. If they are a test optional school, they are really and truly test optional. It will not count against them. And schools are forthcoming on their website or different information, if you look it up, about the percentage of the class each year that submitted a test score. For one, I remember the school I looked at the other day, 30% of the accepted class submitted test scores. So that gives you an idea. It's not like 99% are submitting and 1% is not. They're in good company if they chose not to submit. Other kids went the same route. All right, so really be strategic in that way. Is this you?
Yes.
All right. That's what I have for right now. Mrs. Boudreau will continue on. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to see you all. And finding your fit. There are a few players in finding the fit, and I have often said, well, I didn't come up with this, but I do like it, so I repeated these things. Finding the right college is a match to be made, not a prize to be won. And I really do feel that that's the truth, because what really matters for students when they go to a college is the experience that they have there, what they put into it, the connections that they make. That is really what creates a meaningful college experience. And finding that fit is determined by, well, it's an intersection of three different forces. Of course, the academic and the testing admission requirements are determined by the college. Does the GPA indicate that the student will be successful at that university? The social and academic fit. A student has to be, comfortable walking onto that campus and feeling like, yeah, I totally see myself here. I really think this is the right fit for me. So that's why there's no such thing as a wasted college visit, because I've talked to so many students who said, oh, I want to go to this school. I wanted to go to this school since I was in second grade. And then they go to the campus and they're like, yeah, okay, that really wasn't what I expected. And so then they sort of surprise themselves with how they feel when they walk onto certain campuses and really get that feeling of connection and seeing themselves there. And then, of course, the financial fit is determined by the family. Is the school affordable? How much financial aid is going to be awarded? Considering the travel costs. I know, especially now with flights and price of gas being what it is. I used to have students say all the time, I want to go to California. It's like, well, that's a pretty long flight to come back, and it's kind of hard to get to and from. But again, these are all factors that are part of the family's decision making. The standardized testing, as Mrs. Gormley had explained so well, there are so many schools that are remaining test optional. However, there are going to be certain programs that perhaps some more competitive programs, possibly an engineering program or pre-med or pre-law or something that they might want to see test scores. So it is a good idea if to get one in, just so that you have it, and especially for those Florida schools, the state schools do require them in Florida. The private schools, not so much, but the state schools do. So in preparing for the SAT, we recommend previewing and reviewing your PSAT score report. Took the PSATs, I think it was October 13th. I think that was the date. I don't know why that stuck in my head. And the PSAT scores should be coming in for your student, or some students, I guess their scores are starting to trickle in to students' accounts, but we should be getting a copy of them, meaning we in the counseling office should be before we leave for the holiday break. So those are forthcoming, and it's really informative. It gives your student an idea of the areas that they're strong in and the areas that they might have to work a little more to develop, to score in the range that they want to for the SATs. The remaining test dates are listed there: December 3rd, March 11th, May 6th, and June 3rd. If I'm not mistaken, we are no longer hosting the SAT here. We're not hosting the SAT here, but it is at surrounding districts very, very nearby. And you can register by going to collegeboard.org, rather your student can. The ACT, the remaining dates are December 10th, February 11th, April 15th, June 10th, and July 15th. We are hosting it, at least as far as we know, we're hosting it on April 15th. But due to the so many schools remaining test optional, numbers have been lower, so we just kind of wait to see if they're going to have it here at Kinnelon or if they're going to consolidate with another district. Either way, the test will be available close by should you want it. And again, the test optional schools, colleges really do mean it. If they're a test optional school and they're test optional for the program that your child is applying to, there is no harm in not submitting a test score. And if you did want to see the full list of colleges and universities that are test optional, you can find that at the link is on there that you'll be able to access. It's called fairtest.org, FAIRTEST.org. That's where you'll be able to find those. Okay, majors and careers. Now, most students are not really sure exactly what they want to do for the next, 40 years or so of their lives. They're not really sure. And so students will agonize with me sometimes. Oh, I'm not really sure what major should I choose? What should I do? It is okay to be undecided. It's totally fine, because chances are the first couple of years, first year and a half or so, students will be doing their general education requirements as they maybe explore a little bit. Explore maybe areas that they might want to eventually settle into for a major. As far as strategies when it comes to admission and majors, typically speaking, pre-med, pre-law, possibly an engineering school, and if a business school is particularly competitive, declaring that major can be more challenging to get into at the outset. However, if your student is thinking about, well, I'm kind of thinking about going to medical school, but I'm not sure I really want to commit to that yet, you could always start out with a biology major or a biochemistry major and kind of see where that takes you. But again, undecided, and then just having a general major, whether it's liberal studies or arts and sciences, those can actually help boost your chances a little bit, from what I've seen in students that I've worked with. And again, Naviance, Career Cruising, College Board, and the most recent U.S. Census Job Outlook are great resources to explore careers. I really like the Naviance feature that we have, these career clusters that you can explore. There is a place where your student can take a career assessment. It takes maybe, 30, 40 minutes, something like that, where they answer a bunch of questions about how they would handle certain situations, the choices they would make, and then it will give them a list at the end of possible career options they might want to explore. So it's a great starting point if a student really is like, I have no idea. So it's a great place to start. Now, in the application process, it's important to know that some majors might have separate deadlines in reviewing them for admission. For example, anything having to do with medicine, PT, OT, nursing, definitely nursing tends to be a big one that have earlier deadlines than the typical ones. And architecture, that's also another program that tends to have its own separate category of deadlines. And then of course, well, certainly majors like architecture or music, theater, they would have an audition piece on top of it. So there's that other layer of the application process. And art, if someone is going for art or animation, they would want to see a portfolio for the student as well. So those are just some those are other things to consider if your child is applied to a more specialized program like that. College visits. Students love hearing about this. If a student goes on a college visit and it's during a school day, they are allowed 3 excused school days to go on a college visit. And what we ask that students do is when they return from the event, that they either bring something from the college, something on the college letterhead or something signed from an admissions person, or just simply electronic documentation of the event. For example, I've had students turn in things like, thank you so much for attending our open house. We hope you enjoy blah, blah, blah. So something along those lines, an email confirmation, something like that. If your child brings that into either the attendance office or to us as the counselor, we can then keep those on file to offset those absences for college visits. Although in a perfect world, utilizing days off, such as spring break and summer, but I know spring break tends to be a really popular time to visit colleges because colleges are in session during our spring break. So it's a chance for students to really get a sense of like, okay, what's a typical bustling campus look like? So that they get a real accurate feel. So we recommend starting to research the open house dates. Sometimes they fall on weekends. So that could be, especially for the local schools, that could be an easy trip to make. and registering for virtual or on-campus events, and making a good impression. And I know I'm a little bit old-fashioned with this, but I feel like you can't go wrong by going to a college visit. And now it's not like you have to be complete, in a suit and tie and everything, but to look just sort of put together. I know a lot of kids nowadays will, on the weekend, or if there's a day off, they're, sweatshirts and pajama bottoms and things like that. I would recommend, just maybe a sweater and some jeans, or, just kind of put together, because that first impression that you can make on the admissions representatives, that can go a long way. So that's just my thing. I recommend that to students. Take from that what you will, but I feel like it never hurts to present yourself in a professional way and make a good impression. Okay, letters of recommendation. We do talk to students and suggest that they ask 2 teachers, preferably from their junior year, for letters of recommendation. Generally, I suggest one from the humanities, that could be English, social studies, world language, and then another from the STEM area, math, science, technology, computer science. Just because that will give a nice balanced view of the student's academic ability and performance by teachers from those different areas. We always coach students to have the face-to-face conversation first. Now, I know during COVID, this was not really an option, so we kind of had to do everything electronically. But now that we're back and we're seeing people face-to-face and actually seeing faces, we also encourage them to have that face-to-face, because it is a courtesy. It shows respect for the teacher that the student is asking, and it's just good practice. It's just good practice to have those interpersonal skills. And the teacher does not have to be from someone that they got an A. It could be someone where maybe they really struggled in a class, but they proved over time that they were really able to overcome whatever challenges they faced, and that just said more about the student's character and work ethic. But again, you'd want a teacher that you have good rapport with, and so yeah, we mentioned the verbal request, and then there will be the teacher recommendation request form that we ask students to fill out. And we'll be able to go over this in the individual meetings as well, should you want one. But that is, and we do eventually have the student do an electronic request in September, but the main thing right now is to think about which teachers the student would want to ask. That's the first step. And then the junior questionnaire, or the brag sheet, as we like to call it. Now, we counselors do write a letter for each one of our students. And although by the time students get to be juniors, we know them pretty well. We've gotten to know them a bit. However, there are going to be things that maybe they've accomplished, could be jobs they've had or activities they've had, trips they've gone on that we wouldn't necessarily know about. So we do ask that students fill out a brag sheet. There's a student profile, parent input sheet, so it's a chance to brag about your child. So you can, and sometimes it's really great reading what some of the parents write, because obviously you're the expert on your child, and you can show a side that maybe we don't necessarily get to see. Yes?
Is that the same? That's not the same as the feedback forms?
Oh, it is the same thing.
It is?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Sorry about that. Yes.
No,
Sorry. Yeah, I know.
I just want to make sure there's not.
No, you are. No, thank you for clarifying. Yes, it is the feedback form. We do ask that these are turned in by June 1st, so that we can have access to the information, so that as soon as the school year starts the following September, that will be off and running, getting all of the supporting documents together for your student as they're going through the application process. And let's see, must include a recommendation waiver form. That's important. Students and parents do not see the letters that the teachers send and that the counselor sends. Not because we're trying to be secretive and keeping something from you, but because colleges want to know that whatever letters are sent, there has been no influence or even hint of an influence in what went into that letter. So it maintains the integrity of the letter. And so there is a waiver process that your student and you would fill out indicating, yes, I realize I'm not going to see the letter of recommendation. But in my 20 years of doing this, I have never known a teacher or counselor to write a negative letter about a student. So rest assured, we have nothing but good things to say, because we certainly want to see your child succeed and want to highlight all of their accomplishments. And I will now turn it over to Mrs. Biggins for the college essay. Thank you.
Are we still awake? Did I lose anybody? I'm gonna stand over here because I think it's better for the camera, unless I'm shrinking with my old age, so I can't go over the podium. Thank you guys for being here. I know it's late night and it's full of a lot of information, so I'm hoping that I can kind of wrap it up for you guys here. So we talked about the college essay. So in terms of applications, there's quite a few components, right? So we say the application. Under that is the essay. So most applications, not all, everyone you'll find, every school is just a little different to throw you off. Like just when you think you've got a pattern, one school says, now we want this, now we want that. So I actually suggest keeping a spreadsheet, Google Doc. A lot of times students can keep organized and parents can kind of access it. You can kind of touch base, sometimes students have one list, parents have another. So it's just nice to have like a communal document where you guys can put your thoughts together. But like I said, a lot of schools require an essay. Most schools are on the Common App, so the most common essay is the Common App essay. They typically have about 7 to 8 prompts that they will release. Generally, they're the same year to year, but I always say I wouldn't go too crazy on writing your essay right now until you know the finalized prompts. So the essay is one of the only places where students' voices are heard. For the most part, they're looking at, as we said, the application, the transcript, the letters of recommendation. It's really it. So there's not many opportunities for students to talk about what they want. The essay is one of those spots, and the prompts are very general, so the students have the opportunity to talk about anything. Well, I've seen fantastic essays written about the most general topics. Students go crazy thinking that they have to write something earth-shattering, that they've saved the world, they've made this great invention. The colleges know it's not possible. They're 17, 18 years old. They want to hear about them. The essays can be funny, they can be clever, they can be artistic. There's great resources available online. There's a couple schools that released essays that worked. If you just Google essays that work, lots of colleges will come up and they will post different essays that stood out to them that admission cycle. So I always say, look at those. You'll see some essays that are about loving chicken nuggets, having an old rusty car, just things that are funny. When you think about who's reading these, you're going to see a lot of admissions reps are younger, some are older, so you want to talk about different interests that kind of touch the heart, right? Like, what does this say about this student? What do you really love? But one of the biggest problems I see with the essays is that students ask way too many people for opinion, and their voice gets lost. Every year I have one student that comes to see me that says, I don't know what I'm doing. This person said this person said that, my advisor said this, my teacher said that, my parents want this. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore, and I jumbled it all together, and I don't know what my mission is at this point. The student's voice needs to be there. I would suggest not asking more than 2 to 3 people for a lot of input, because again, students lose track of what they're trying to say, okay? So in terms of editing and writing, you're going to go through multiple drafts. You could start now. It's going to change 20 more times, but it's good to get some ideas on paper, thinking about it. I'd look at researching. I'd look at some colleges that have produced some essays online, so you can peruse through some topics that, maybe spark an interest of the student. Prompts again for the Common App essay will be available in the spring. So there's about 8 prompts, and the last prompt is write about whatever you want. I wouldn't start there. I'd start with the more structured ones to try to guide the student appropriately. The prompts should be released in spring, so you can start, but they change it just slightly. But most of the students do the bulk of the writing in the summer, and I know that most of our English teachers use it as the first assignment when we return in the fall. So you have plenty of opportunities to talk with English teachers and the counselors for feedback on essays. Admissions plans. So we've talked a lot about, applying, and some people are like, well, what do I do? Like, what's the timeline? So in terms of timeline, really there's not much you can do in terms of applying to a school right now. They don't want your stuff right now as a junior. They are still working through seniors. Most of our seniors have applied this year early. Now, when we talk about the terms, you're going to hear these terms frequently with colleges. The terms are regular decision, early action, rolling. I feel that they're not the most accurate representations when we talk about early, right? So it used to be, I always give my little history lesson here. It used to be that the applications had only one deadline. And then the colleges got together and said, let's make it early so everyone can know earlier on. Early is now the norm for most schools. I would say that, and I think the counselors would agree, 70 to 80, maybe even 90% of our students that are college bound or college interested applied by November 1st. And that is considered an early deadline, right? I would think. So the bulk, okay, at least one school. Now, again, colleges don't make it easy for you. Some have early action, some have early decision, some have regular. So again, going back to my spreadsheet that I love so much, writing down what admission types and deadlines each college offers. So when we talk about the different admissions plans, you have regular decision. Regular tends to be in the middle of the year. So right now, December, January, February, that tends to be your regular decisions. Early actions, they're not binding. So that's just applying early and finding out early. There's a constant debate about whether applying early action is beneficial. Most schools would say yes. There are a couple schools that say, it doesn't matter. We use the same criteria. But quite a few schools will say, we'll take a bulk earlier on, and it gets harder as the year goes on. So there is an advantage to applying earlier on. So early action is not binding. Similar in name is early decision. Early decision is, again, a new strategy that colleges have used. It's a binding agreement. When you apply early decision, you're only applying to one school early decision, and it is a committed binding agreement that we, the counselor, the student, and the parents all have to sign a document saying, if this student is accepted to this particular school, they will attend there. No questions asked. They're going to withdraw the other applications. They can still apply to other schools, but if they get in, this is it. This is their home. That's it. Sounds great. You're going, you're stuck. You can't back out of that contract. However, there's a piece of the finances. The schools that tend to do early decision and the schools that have the advantage of doing early decision tend to be a little more expensive. So you're applying, saying I'm going, agreeing to the finances before you maybe got that financial aid package. So it can be a little scary, and it's a family decision in terms of early decision. Early decision definitely grants quite a big acceptance rate, a much higher yield and acceptance rate than maybe some of the other ones, like a regular or rolling or early action. And that's because as a college, we have to think about a business perspective. If you accept 100 kids early action, you're not sure how many are going to come. But if you accept 100 early decision, you know those kids are coming. So they're always going to take more students early decision than early action, right? If you look, one of the things that I would also suggest is looking at colleges. They have freshman profiles of acceptances from their last year. It'll tell you the mid 50% for SAT scores, GPA. It'll also tell you how many students were accepted early decision, early action, or regular. And you'll see a bulk are typically accepted early action and a lot early decision if they offer it. Does that make sense? I feel like I've lost it. Okay, rolling. those are schools that don't have a specific set deadline. That's just as the year goes on, they get an application, they send it out. They get sent out a decision, no questions asked. They don't wait for everyone for a particular deadline to send out a bulk of decisions. They get one in, they roll it out. Just constant wheel of acceptances. Resume. So many schools won't accept a specific resume, like a PDF of a resume. However, they want an activity list through the Common App. Students kind of, again, get caught up in this. I have to have X amount of activities. It is always quality over quantity. They don't want to see, oh, I'm in 20 different clubs, I spend 2 hours a year and that's it. They want to know, what have you really put in the time, the commitment, the leadership into? They want to see you building on those activities. So again, it's great to have a full 10 list, but what is the quality of those activities? So filling it with clubs, sports, groups, community service, awards. They like to see the well-rounded student. I think that's true, but there are some students that they know are really geared in a specific area. And if there's one activity that takes up a bulk of their time, they're okay with that because they'd rather see that they're committed and spending a lot of time outside of the classroom doing something. They don't want to see the student that's going to go to class and go back to their dorm and game the rest of the day. Unless they're doing esports, which is sort of a new thing, but they want a student that's going to come to campus and be involved on their campus, not just hide in their dorm. Okay? So again, we'd like to make things more complicated. So we talked a little bit about finding your fit, okay? There are students that are looking to go to college with athletics or with a particular skill or pursue a particular major. So when we talk about college athletics, we encourage you / require you to fill out the NCAA clearinghouse. So anyone that's looking to play Division I, II, and even possibly Division III needs to complete the NCAA Eligibility Center online. Again, another step. Sometimes students feel, oh, it's easy being an athlete. No, they got to do a little more homework in terms of finding a fit, making sure that not only are they happy with the school, they're happy with that coach, that particular team. Am I going to play? There's layers of decision making and finding that fit. For our artists and performers, what we would say is they have to go through the same academic requirements typically that are required by any college and application requirements. So doing the Common App, the letters, but then there's an extra layer. So again, going back to my spreadsheet, I'm selling the spreadsheet hard, okay? But that's because when you are a performer, we have musicians that at one school need to perform maybe on a specific day, specific pieces. We have another school that maybe wants any choice, but it has to be within a jazz genre or a solo. So navigating those extra pieces can be very difficult, and it creates a layer, again, of applications and decision making. We will work with you. The last thing, we will work with you, so you're not alone, but it's important to do the research. Right now, as a junior, the most important piece is researching and making sure you can navigate those. Presenting yourself, social media. So at this point in the world, I don't think colleges pretend that students don't have social media. I think they know students have it. They just want to make sure that you're using it appropriately. So in terms of social media, cleaning up whichever social media pieces they have. I was very fortunate to work in admissions before I started being a school counselor. And I can tell you that I did Google some students that I had across my desk. It's not usual. Sometimes there's something that kind of triggers you to look, but in the case that they do, what comes up? Okay, is it positive things? Is it negative things? Okay, so making sure your privacy settings are clear, making sure there's nothing there that's maybe a little bit too edgy. There have been schools, and it's been in the news, that have revoked acceptances because of students' activities or social media pages. On the other hand, I've had students that use social media as part of their application. Schools, again, are starting to embrace that piece. There are students that have professional pages. They maybe have some sort of skill, musician, athletics, artistic, They have a social media page. There is now on quite a few, especially highly competitive schools, a spot to put a handle or your social media link. So students that have a page that would work in their advantage, they are welcome to use it. Again, making sure it's appropriate and professional. So when we say being professional in your emails, we talk about also making sure you use the right email address. Don't use toocoolforschool@yahoo.com, okay? It happens, okay? Also, parents' emails, make sure their voicemail is appropriate. Not like, hey, leave a message, bro. Like, okay, colleges do call. They call, they check, they say, hey, we're calling to invite you to this college campus visit. So making sure, because no one answers when it's an unknown call. A lot of times they don't answer even if they do know who's calling, but making sure your voicemail is an appropriate message. Correspondence. I think we've moved to a time where we text a lot. So it's like, hi, blah, 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 blah. We want to go back to being professional in greetings. Hello, admissions committee. Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Thank you for your time. You don't want to be that email that's passed around the office like, look what this kid wrote. You want to make sure that it's, maybe look what this kid wrote in a positive manner, not unprofessionally. Because again, we're talking about our first step towards a career, a first step towards being professional. And I think that it goes a long way when you're being very nice and cordial to the person that is going to be giving you a decision in terms of your acceptance. Other post-high school options. So generally, most of you that are attending are thinking about college, or sure you're going to be doing college, but for us, our goal is to make sure that every student has some sort of plan. Whether it's going to college, whether they're not sure about college, or they have a trade or skill that they also want to pursue. We have students pursuing community college, military, trade, employment, taking a gap year. Work with your counselors, work with us. We are open and willing to talk about any option that I've seen. I've seen students that have gone straight to Broadway. That they want to take some time off. We are not just going to push you to college. Obviously, if you're here, you're probably thinking about that. But if you're on the fence, we have quite a few other conversation pieces and resources. We have this link available, which is Career to Work, which gives all the students hyperlinks to specific unions, trade schools, and other opportunities available. So if the student's interested in that, we are also available to discuss that as well. Stress. This is where I leave. So thank you guys for being here.
Thank you. So you guys are getting a lot of information at once. After one of these presentations, I remember parents saying to me, I feel like I'm trying to take a sip of water out of a fire hydrant because it's all coming out of it at once. But I can assure you that as this process unfolds, the counselors really work very closely with the students and the families to make sure that each piece is done in a timely fashion. But we're just giving it to you all at once, but it unfolds very nicely. And what success looks like is different for every family. Like Ms. Biggins touched upon, there's military options, there's trade schools, there's 2-year schools, 4-year schools, different rigor of potential schools. So as I'm sure you're doing, I would just suggest that you continue to have that conversation with your child as to what does success look like in your house. We don't want them to be stressed. Life is stressful enough. So we just want to make sure that they have a healthy perspective. And be resilient. Resilience is huge. It will serve them well when they're in high school going through this process, and also when they go off to college. Resiliency is really key. And a student-led process. So the counselors will be meeting with your students one-on-one a lot as this process beginning at the end of the junior year, and definitely a lot during the senior year as well. We want the parents to be the passengers, definitely a part of the process, but we do encourage the students to take the lead on it. We want them to be independent because that will translate well when they go to college. So you will be getting, so we have junior meetings coming up, and we hope to be finished with these junior meetings by January 13th. So what I'm going to ask all the parents to do is to please email your child's counselor and ask for a time, a mutually convenient time to come in and have a meeting. It'll be with you, it'll be with your child and the counselor, and we're gonna really sit down with you, have a personalized conversation on what the end of junior year in addition to senior year will look like for your family. So please do that. You can do it tonight. I know that they're clearing out their inboxes because we know we're going to get a lot of emails very quickly. So they'll be very quick to respond to you and find a mutually convenient time. So this is where we'll take questions. So our people at home, if you have any questions, you can email your counselor, or you can hold those questions until you meet with them. That's up to you. But we have the opportunity to field any questions for our in-house families. If the counselors want to come up, we can all field these questions if you have any. You got this.
Best we can.
Not all at once.
And when you leave here, if you think of something,
Yes.
of course, just shoot us a note. There's something somebody said, and I can't remember what I was gonna say.
Do you take,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Please, go ahead.
do you take meetings, that's to be done before January 13th, correct?
Well, that's our goal, to be finished, because the counselors start getting very busy with scheduling for next year. So we hope to have our junior meetings completed by then, but we can certainly fit in a meeting after that if it has to
So
be.
when do you start taking?
Right
Tonight.
away,
Tomorrow?
tonight.
What time?
I met with a couple people already.
Oh,
Yeah.
They had older kids, so they already knew it was something they wanted to do, so
Yeah.
they hopped on it already.
Just send you an email, you'll see what you have available. Let's get it.
We tend to look and see the student schedule, so we don't want to take them out of the math class. So we tend to look either at gym, PE class, or an elective, whatever we think would be the least
Okay.
harmful, pulling them for 45 minutes.
I'll flex.
Sure.
There's a hand back there.
Yeah.
Can you get the transcripts on course?
So,
Just to make sure, like.
yes, there is a feature. There is a feature that you click and you get to get the transcript on there. Yes.
And at the end of the junior year, we send out to all rising seniors a copy of their transcript, because that's the transcript they want. The colleges want what they call sixth semester, so 9th, 10th, and 11th grades. That's the GPA that they're looking at, and so that document will go out to students at the end of June.
Yes.
So, absent standardized test requirements anymore, how do colleges determine, some teachers say are just easier A than other teachers, some classes are just easier, some schools give out a ton more A's than other schools give out. How does this college determine one straight A student versus a straight A student from another school?
I can take this one. We do send out a school profile with all of our supporting documents. And by supporting documents, we mean teacher letters of recommendation, counselor letter, the transcript. There's some additional forms that we fill out as far as our what our GPA scale is. Our school profile is very involved, showing all the different AP courses we offer, the honors, the CP classes, and so we give all of that information so that the colleges can see, they can compare, a student from this district versus a student at this district. We also show previous test scores from the past year as far as SATs or ACTs. So we do provide some relational information so that they can really get a sense of the rigor here at Kinnelon.
However, life is not fair. And you should know that going through this. Kids will hear someone they know is not as strong a student as they are getting accepted somewhere, and they did not. They're well aware of that. And so is it perfect? Nope, not at all.
There's a lot of variables too that the students don't see when they are comparing themselves to other students who get accepted. So if I applied to the School of Engineering at Rutgers, for example, but the criteria for my admission is going to be much more competitive than a student who also got accepted to a different program at Rutgers. So there are some different variables depending upon how you're approaching it.
Also, make a note for some people writing, you're going to hear a term SRAR. We didn't have it up there, but a lot of the large public universities don't take the transcript from us. They have the student self-report the transcript through this portal, the self-reported academic record. Rutgers is one of them. It's typically the large public schools. So rather than us sending a transcript, which they will not take, the student submits the first part of the application and then has to go in and take everything on their transcript and self-report it, and that goes to the school. So you'll hear that term potentially, so just don't be surprised.
We always tell the students, if you get accepted and you go, we send the final transcript and they compare the transcript with what they reported. So it's very important not to make any errors.
And to what you were saying about the standardized test scores, don't make that your incentive to send them. I think a lot of people, it's this new unknown territory of sending or not sending scores. And it's I know that when I applied and when a lot of us applied, you had to. And now we moved away from that. And actually, I was actually lucky enough to sit with Princeton and George Washington and ask them about their test optional policy, and they felt that sometimes sending scores, because there's this theory that the parents and students, and I think a lot of individuals have, is it's better to send something than nothing in terms of comparing, because you're afraid of like, well, how do they differentiate? But they were actually saying that sometimes having a lower or maybe on the cusp mediocre score could do more damage and be the reason you're not accepted, as opposed to not sending something being the reason you're accepted. So it's a really tricky spot for you to it's a fine line to walk sometimes, especially when you're on that borderline in terms of standardized test scores. It makes sense.
So why isn't there national rankings on the high schools based on the SATs and SATs?
Why is the, I'm sorry, why are there not national rankings
National ranking.
A national ranking?
for us or for the college?
No, national ranking.
Oh,
That would be fair for everybody to, say all the students from Kinlaw average stayed 1,280 on an SAT, and all the students from Joe Schmo, Missouri, averaged 1,180.
well, within the school profile that we
I
provide,
understand that you provide that. Why isn't there like a national ranking that the universities offer?
They might have that data, like I can't speak to that, like in terms of their policy, but they might know based on school profile, like on average, what a typical student looks like. I don't know, that's a national.
speaking to that, the reps from the colleges tend, they have a region or certain high schools that they get to know. They have a sense of what that student or what that information for that student looks like for that high school. I can say years ago, I had to call a school because a student thought he should have gotten some sort of scholarship, and the dean of admissions said, I know Kinlaw High School. I know his GPA. I know about where he probably falls, although we don't provide rank. He's like, no, the scholarship is a no. And so they know their schools, they know the sense of what we offer, the typical type school, the students coming out, that based on the profile, based on working with a certain geographic region for years. So again, not a perfect system.
Well, if you think of any questions between now and driving home or whenever, feel free to, in addition to making an appointment with your child's counselor, feel free to shoot them that question, or when you sit down together, you can have your list of questions that you can think about in advance. And your children are in great hands. These counselors are phenomenal. They know what they're doing. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, and thank you,
And
everybody.
thank you, everybody at home.
Outside companies use that.
Oh, that's
So we don't.
Oh, sure.
So you just have to.